With that, let's shift focus over to the other big story this week, the attack at Bondi Beach. India is set to send a joint investigation team to Australia to assist in the probe into the Bondi Beach terror attack in Sydney. As per intel sources, the key focus will be on one of the attackers, Sajid Akram's Indian passport link and his visit to India 3 to 4 years ago. The decision to formally join the investigation follows inputs that the suspect held an Indian passport, triggering jurisdictional and intelligence sharing requirements between the two countries. The team will examine the shooter's ideological leanings, possible radicalization, links to terror networks, and whether his India visit played a key role in planning or recruitment. But the question remains, could this attack have been averted, given that there were repeated intel warnings shared by Israel, especially when it comes to the rising anti-Semitism observed not just in Australia, but the world over? I spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich, who's in fact the director at AJC, which is the American Jewish Committee. Let's listen in to what she's had to say. Colonel Leibovich, thank you for joining in on CNN News 18. I send you wishes of strength and courage this Hanukkah. Australia's Jewish Council had been flagging off the rise in anti-Semitic incidents, and Prime Minister Netanyahu even penned a letter warning the Australian government of their anti-Semitic policies, is what he's called. It also seems that enough warnings had been sent to Australia about a terror attack that could have been anticipated. Do you think the Albanese government has ignored the writing on the wall?
Well, I think that here in Israel, when we watched carefully what happened after the 7th of October in Australia in the last 2 years, no one really was surprised to see this horrific terror attack. So unfortunately, the statements about, standing alongside the Jewish community are very important, but they will not bring the necessary solution to the current situation in Australia. By the way, it's also in other countries across the world. So the atmosphere, this is the atmosphere that actually fueled the ultimate result and the very unfortunate result which we've seen in Australia.
So Israel's Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, has also charged the Australian recognition of the Palestinian state as an act that poured fuel on the anti-Semitic fires. Do you think this incident of a mass shooting at the Bondi Beach can be seen as a byproduct of Australia's recognition of the Palestinian state and also the war in Gaza, as several critics have already started linking the two?
100% I agree that the war in Gaza actually stimulated the situation on the ground, brought out different jihadists from their holes across the globe, and actually motivated them to act somehow against Jewish targets or Israeli targets, as we've seen in other places across the world. There is a way to handle this. I think it has not been handled well. And let's be very clear. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the Australian government to protect the Jewish community as well as any other community living in Australia. So from that perspective, they had failed. For 9 minutes, the father and son actually shot for 9 minutes without being interrupted. So I wonder what kind of security mechanism was there on the ground to secure 1,000 people in a very open and public area? And the answers are not clear. And if we'll find out that there was not sufficient preparation, then this actually answers the question how serious this was taken in advance, how serious these warnings on terror attacks were taken in advance by the local authorities.
It's interesting you highlight that, because the father, Sajid Akram, was licensed to keep multiple guns. And so Australia's Prime Minister has also proposed tougher laws on including limiting the number of guns licensed owners can keep, also reviewing their license validity, emphasizing that licenses should not be permanent. Do you think this is too little too late?
100% too little too late. Listen, 2 years ago in Australia, there was a synagogue that was burned. So banning matches, banning use of fire, that will bring elimination to the next possible attack? Of course not. There are 3 steps that each and every government needs to do. Number 1 is educate. You need to educate the people. What is anti-Semitism? What is hate the others? Respecting for religions. That's number 1 from very young ages, by the way, including media. Number 2 is legislation, because at the end of the day, the authorities would need some sort of a legal framework to act with. And number 3 is the enforcement of that legislation. In other words, if there will be laws and then there will be no punishments, then of course there will be no deterrence, and we will see this kind of activities go on and on and on. In addition to this, I'd like to point out that the Australian government does have an envoy for anti-Semitism. And this envoy actually submitted a plan. How should the country fight anti-Semitism? This plan needs to be implemented. And unfortunately, that is not the case until now.
Colonel Leibovich, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for sharing your precious insights. Again, I'd like to send you and the entire community prayers of strength and courage. Thank you for joining me on CNN News 18.
Thank you. Much appreciated.